Balance will be on display today after the service. The book contains 4 words by the 14th Dalai Lama and the Queen Mother of Bhutan, and it has received 3 International Book Awards. Kolkin embraces art as a vital vehicle for communication with each other and with our deepest selves. Welcome, Jon.
Thank you. Well, the first crucial step is to see whether we can get the computer system to work. So just give us a second.
Here you go, Jon. That's right. Oh, sorry. You were looking for the computer down there.
We're being optimistic because we've done this a couple of times, both today and a few weeks ago, and it seemed to work. So we're being hopeful. As I do with our 3-year-old granddaughter, give me 5. It's an honor to be here today. It really is, and I really appreciate the opportunity. The photographs you'll see, as maybe were alluded to, are ones that I've taken while living intermittently throughout Asia over the last, gosh knows how many decades. First, gratitude to the congregation for inviting me here today, Reverend Ma, and specifically Mary Anna. Where'd she go? There she is. And all the rest of the team, Barbara and everyone else, for making this a reality, hopefully. So a question, who wants to be happy? Come on, wait a minute, we have a couple of hands aren't up yet. Okay, thank you. Okay. So, well, here's the deal. I'm not an authority on happiness or anything else for that matter. Okay, I'm not a scholar. In fact, I'm somewhat dyslexic, so reading is not my strong suit. But what I will say is that I've had the distinct honor of being in the presence of His Holiness on a number of occasions. And he is an expert on happiness. And for those of you who have not seen this documentary film with His Holiness and Desmond Tutu, I strongly recommend that you watch it. I've also had the distinct honor of having communications with a number of the world's leading scientists on the concept of happiness and compassion. What I'd like to be talking about today is not just my personal opinion, but as a physician, I like things to be also based as much as we realistically can on what does the science tell us. So here's a question. What is the recipe for happiness? Well, there's some sociology studies that have been done, and they basically bring us to 5 external factors that are most commonly associated with achieving happiness. The first is shelter. I mean, we all want a place where we can sleep at night, et cetera, et cetera. Food, enough food. Palatable water, makes sense. And a secure environment where there's not a lot of crazy stuff going on or wars or whatever. Those are 4 of the 5. So what's the 5th? And this is the most important one. Well, there was a Harvard study that's ongoing now, looking at what is of all the different factors, what is the thing that leads to happiness? And it's a study looking at men from a disadvantaged area in Boston, starting in 1938 and following them all the way up to the present. And what did they find? Strong personal relationships. Strong personal relationships. That's really, really key. And one of the things I really appreciated hearing earlier today was this concept of that we are all interconnected and all interdependent. So in order to live in happiness, so to speak, what we need is that type of relationships, those types of relationships. And we're not just talking about present relationships, we're talking about relationships to the past. We wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the past. And also our relationship to the future, when you look at the web photographs of the universe, I mean, it's just mind-boggling. We're all interconnected. And in Buddhism, and again, I'm not here to promote Buddhism. In fact, His Holiness is very, very firm that everyone needs to find their own path. But one of the things that Buddhism has is this concept of the endless knot, this idea that everything is interconnected. And this is the symbol for the endless knot, and endless knot. Also, I think it's important to potentially rethink our definition of family. This is a young monk who I met when I was living in India. And he's 6 years old. And one of the senior monks invited me to his private quarters, and we were sitting and talking. And he said, I asked him, like, just casually, tell me about your family. Well, it became clear after a while that he wasn't talking about his biological family. He was talking about the monks that raised him. And you see the hand interpositions here, all the different ways that he is connected to all these other individuals. In Asia, it would be unheard of for anyone to put their hand on the top of a child's head other than a close family member. It's a sacred part where the mind resides somewhat. So again, this whole image represents this interconnectedness, interdependence, and our expansion of what we view as family. So my point is that you may have challenges with your own biological family. That's fine. You want to be respectful to them, but you don't need to take on all their challenges, and that doesn't need to be your only vision of family. If you have a very close personal biological family, great. But if you don't, that's okay too. So those are the external factors. What are the internal factors that contribute to happiness? Well, what I'd like to pose to you is that from my perspective, it would be what I call inner harmony, or what the Dalai Lama would call inner peace. What I'm referring to here is that there's chaos out there. There's chaos internally in all of us. The idea is not to live this bland, neutral, nothing kind of existence. We're going to have with the waves going somewhat up and down, but we want to be in that resiliency zone where we're not at the extremes, one or the other. And that's this whole idea of inner harmony. That's what that's all about. It's a balance. It's living in balance. Okay. So that's external balance with the extrinsic world, and internal balance, what's going on the inside. But here's a key point. The balance must be guided by compassion and wisdom. Otherwise, we run into trouble. And I'll explain what I mean by that in just a minute. Fortunately, most infants are born instinctively with kindness. Little plug on my 3-year-old granddaughter there with one of my daughters. That's the way we're born. Okay, that's great. And in fact, if you look at the golden rule, it's all based on that, okay? That we want to love our neighbor as ourselves. Okay, that's instinctive. We want to do that. We want to be kind, okay? The challenge we have frequently is that if that idea of kindness is not guided by wisdom, it's not true compassion. You have to put them together. Compassion has to be with wisdom. Throughout Asia, they don't have a separate term for heart and for mind. It's called the heart mind. And when His Holiness was first talking to me about that, I was kind of confused, didn't know what he was talking about. It comes from the Sanskrit Citta, C-I-T-T-A, heart mind. They're interconnected, they're interdependent. Some of us, particularly in our Western society, with our educational system, are very much about, training the mind and answering questions to tests and facts and all that sort of thing. But if they're not married to intuition, to our consciousness, to all these other things that are part of our heart, then we're likely to go astray. And that's what we all tend to do sometimes. We tend to go astray. So here's a question. What is compassion? Well, I have a somewhat different definition of compassion than what you've probably heard about or read in a dictionary. Okay. What I'd like to suggest is that compassion is the intention to respond with kindness toward those who might benefit. I emphasize to those who might benefit, motivated by a true concern for their well-being, not what am I going to get out of this by being kind to them. Sure, we all have that instinct, we want to be liked and whatever. That's all great, but it has to be based on a true concern for their well-being. What compassion is not is kindness toward those who are suffering. Suffering is a term that's used throughout Asia, throughout the West. In most religions, they keep using the word suffering. Okay. What I'd like to pose to you is that that is a mistranslation of the original term. Viewing everyone as suffering and attempting to share their pain, that's what's affective empathy, can be overwhelming. And we're getting overwhelmed, particularly with the pandemic and even before that, with all the craziness going on. It triggers distress inside of us and leads to physical and emotional illnesses. I won't get into the long list. And over time, it diminishes our effectiveness. Why? Because we have empathic fatigue, not compassion fatigue, empathic fatigue, exhaustion and burnout. So that's what is the challenge, okay? We're not supposed to take on the suffering of others. I know that's a radical idea to say, but we're not supposed to do that unless you're doing it with training under expert supervision over an extended period of time. So the Dalai Lama is able to do that. Desmond Tutu can do that, but the rest of us mortals get in trouble when we try to do that. So the original term was dukkha in the Sanskrit. Dukkha means non-ease or out of balance. I keep talking about balance. Sukha is the opposite, at ease or in balance. Okay, the original analogy for dukkha was probably the wheels of an ox cart being out of alignment, out of balance. That was the real intention. So you don't have to look at me and say, oh, he's suffering, I have to be nice to him in order to be kind to me, in order to be compassionate toward me. And I don't have to be that way toward you. But I can relate to the fact that we're all out of balance to a certain extent, or a bird's out of balance, or nature's out of balance, right? So that creates that interconnectedness, that interdependence. We're all part of the same family, not just that poor person that maybe is having some acute problem right now. We're all interconnected. Therefore, compassion targets all of us. Hillel, the Jewish scholar, has this wonderful quote. It's one of my favorites. It says, if I am not for myself, who will be for me? If I'm only for myself, what am I? And if not now, when? Compassion for self, balanced with compassion for others, connected with action. That's the balance that we need with others. Otherwise, we run into that suffering spiral and we hurt ourselves when we're trying to help others. Okay. Here's an example, and this is not a political statement whatsoever, but Bhutan is my favorite country in the world. Actually, I'll be back there again next month. I can't wait. They're known for gross national happiness, and this is the king of Bhutan. It's a landlocked Buddhist kingdom in the Himalayas, 750,000 people dispersed all over the place in these valleys. And when COVID hit, they closed down their country to the outside world, even though their major source of income is tourism. They gathered together enough COVID vaccine to inoculate the entire adult population. And they set aside 2 weeks to do it, and a distribution channel throughout the whole country, if you can imagine, in the Himalayas. And the king said, I am not going to get vaccinated until the 14th day because I want to make sure every subject in the kingdom has the opportunity to get vaccinated before I do. That's compassion, wisdom. That's bringing it all together. And you know what? Within 2 weeks, 97% of the population was vaccinated. So what are some of the root causes of being unhappy and out of balance? You know, we all want to be in balance, but what are the things that get in our way? Well, one of the things I'd like to suggest, and as we go along in life, we kind of lose track a little bit of our core values. What makes us go? What's our passion? What really motivates us? Because we get sucked into you have to fit this mold, whatever it might be. Okay. As an example, I don't refer to myself as a physician, let alone a surgeon. A surgeon is someone that's supposed to be doing surgery all the time. That's the mindset. Because if everybody calls you a surgeon and you call yourself a surgeon, that's what you're supposed to do. No, you're supposed to help with people. So I refer to myself, if I have to tell people what some of my background is, I'm a physician, not a surgeon. Okay. But even so, I don't even bring up the fact that I am a physician as part of who I am, because that's only a small portion of the whole. Okay. You have to keep everything in balance. You're potentially a parent. You're potentially, you love sports. You're potentially all kinds of things. That's the balance. And we don't want to get sucked into being something, somebody else's vision of who we are. That's what gets us in trouble. If we know what our core values are, that can help in determining what our goals are, a 3-year plan or whatever it might be. And by knowing what our goals are, that can help us in our priorities and our actions from day to day. So what I tend to do on a daily basis is have a pretty good idea when I first get up in the morning, what my main goals are for that day, my priorities, et cetera, et cetera. But it's a lot easier to make those decisions when it's all based on where the values first. Okay. I like this 3-stanza quote from His Holiness. Man and woman sacrifices his health for money, then sacrifices money to recuperate. It's an imbalance. Now, there's nothing wrong with making an income. You've got to live, but sometimes it gets out of balance. Okay. So what's our value? What's our priority? What's our goal? He is so anxious about the future, and she, that he does not enjoy the present, not focused on right now and what's going on right now, always thinking ahead, never really smelling the roses. Okay. Going for that walk that you always wanted to go in, whatever it might be, that hobby that one has. He lives as if he's never going to die, then dies having never really lived. I took this photograph. I gave a presentation at a UU congregation up in Boston a few months back, and I came across this as I was driving along and had to stop and take the photograph. They really laughed at this one. These missed opportunities are often a byproduct of destructive emotions, negative emotions, okay? So what are some of those? And these are universal. Okay, and I kind of alluded to this before. Greed, power, that's number one. It says here, the real money is in insatiable greed. The next thing, ego, arrogance, whatever you want to call it. It says, I'm getting a little tired of your holier than thou attitude. Oh, me. Envy, resentment. And it says, of course the Johnsons get the bigger cloud. And then finally, anger. Thank you for calling anger management. What the F do you want? Oh me. We've all been there, right? To a certain extent. So what's the antidote? Well, here's something that this is one I carry with me a lot. Okay, and this helps me sometimes. I'm not perfect. Not holier than thou, for sure. We can't control every situation that comes our way. We can't. We can't. But how we respond is a choice. That's the key. That's the key. That's the key. So training our heart mind, that's the key. And this afternoon, when we break out into the other area, I'll be going over some of the key practical strategies that I use, and some of them may be of value to you, about how to train oneself to more easily make those choices. But what I'd like to give you today, right now, is something that I've come up with, though I know it's not originally to me, a 6-step process for navigating through challenging situations with compassion. So you can use this when you're dealing with a family member, when you're, work, whatever the situation might be. I have an exhibition coming at the Tibet Museum in India, opens next month, and it uses some of these photographs and some of the practices that Buddhists do on a daily basis, and it shows how those various practices are connected to these different 6 steps I'm about to mention, but they're universal. You don't have to be Buddhist. The first, this is really, really key, is focus on the present. So when I'm with a patient, I need to be focused. I can't be thinking about this or that or whatever. It's really, really important to be focused, because if I'm in a challenging situation and I'm not focused, then I won't even know that I'm necessarily in a challenging situation. I have to be self-aware of what's going on. How am I responding to this situation? Is my heart racing? Am I clenching my teeth? Am I speeding up? Am I getting irritable? What's going on? So that's step number 2, self-awareness. Sense how my heart and mind and body are responding. So first, I've got to focus. Then I got to sense if I'm in the operating room and things aren't looking right, I've got to understand that something's not quite right. My instincts have to kick in. And then I have to try and restore some calm. Step back from the operating room table, take a couple breaths. I'm not worried that the nurses are going to think, what the heck is Dr. Kolkin doing? He's supposed to know all these answers, blah, 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 all this crazy stuff, which I obviously don't. And when I'm able to step back and stay calm, then it calms everyone else too. Okay. So focus, awareness, and then calming. Dialectical behavioral therapy, it's called, emotion regulation, all kinds of terms for that. Then resolve destructive emotions. I've got to get rid of my ego or bias about, I got to show that I'm a great physician or whatever, or what I thought I was going to find, or they signed the out permit for this and I'm finding something else different. I've got to put all that aside. And then occasionally, hopefully, I'm able to summon some wisdom, a little bit of wisdom. What's really going on here? What's going on in this conversation I'm having with this person? Why are they upset? Looking at it from their perspective, what's going on here? Whatever your situation might be. And then respond with compassion. So if I just want to try to do good, but I haven't gone through those steps, then despite my best intentions, things can go wrong. Okay. As I mentioned, afterwards, we'll get into some practical strategies. So I'll just finish a little bit here. This is the book His Holiness was kind enough to write a foreword for, and the Queen Mother of Bhutan. It's really about, they're intimate photographs that I've taken of Buddhists from throughout Asia, exploring universally relevant principles for achieving some of the things that we've been talking about. It's 18 chapters. Photographs are from 10 different countries, but each chapter is about one of the building blocks for living a more balanced life, not a geographic location. The book was designed by Lance Heide, who designed 14 of Ansel Adams' books. Just a wonderful opportunity to work with him. And the poetry in the book is by a dear friend of mine, a PhD Buddhist professor, scholar, Dr. Paula Rai on the West Coast. and it's, as mentioned, it's received a number of book awards. If you're interested in copies of the book, you don't buy the book. You make a donation to our Shades of Compassion Foundation. And as a thank you gift, you get a signed copy of the book. So we have some copies in the back. Our foundation does projects throughout the world and also in the United States related to compassion. Half the money that we receive from the book goes to Emory University's Sea Learning, which teaches compassion to children worldwide. And the other goes to the Tariana Foundation, which does micro grants for empowering disadvantaged women. So we receive no money out of the book. It all goes to those two entities. So you're welcome to try to reach out to me at any time. You can through the shadesofcompassion.org website. You can also get additional books, make donations, whatever, also through my website, kolkinphotography.com. So I think what we'll do is kind of leave it at that. Thanks very much for being here with me today. And I really appreciate this honor to be among all of you. Thank you very much.